When you hear the word nuclear, what comes to mind? Do you think of monolithic cooling towers and giant piles of toxic radioactive waste? Chances are when you think of nuclear, you're not thinking something positive. But when I think nuclear, I consider a future that's energy abundant and environmentally friendly. Good evening, my name is Amory Quinn, and I'm arguing for a tenfold increase in the nuclear energy production in California as an ecological solution to the growing need for energy. First, I'm going to discuss how the demand for electricity is increasing faster than its overall domestic output. And second, I'll explain how nuclear energy is the perfect candidate to meet this demand. Finally, I'm going to dispel the many myths surrounding the dangers of nuclear energy and explain how it's actually a lot safer and more practical than people are led to believe. Energy is one of the most valuable commodities in the world that we live in today. Just consider how much of your life is powered by electricity, and the computers that we're using, and the phones in our pockets, and the lights above our heads. The question of viable and reliable energy production is one that's going to be pertinent to everyone. Now, I'm a mechanical engineering student, and I've got a keen interest in the future of industry and technology. And the question of energy production is one that our generation is going to have to tackle soon, as the demand for eco-friendly energy skyrockets, not just in California, but around the whole world. Now, the current output of energy in California isn't nearly enough to keep up with our demand. We're heavily dependent on out-of-state energy, with 33% of our power coming from states in the Pacific Northwest and Southwest. We're also heavily dependent on natural gas imports from Canada and the Rocky Mountains. Our domestic production of natural gas only meets about 15% of our total demand. And that demand's going to increase every year. We need to work towards becoming self-reliant, or else we run the risk of becoming even more energy dependent on out-of-state energy. And as a result of this constant import, the people, the citizens of California, are going to be the ones that have to foot the bill. And think about it. Can we really claim that we're reducing carbon emissions just to export all of the dirty work to out of state? I mean, it's a real hollow victory for us, and it's kind of an injustice to the environment. Now, a major harm to energy production is the overzealous regulation of nuclear energy and how it's totally unwarranted. It's been made artificially expensive to build and maintain a nuclear power plant because you have to pay huge fees for all of the paperwork, and you also have to wait up to decades for permits. Now, this isn't aided by the Nuclear Energy Innovation and Modernization Act of 2019. Everything about it is done to increase the bureaucratic process of constructing and zoning nuclear power plants, which is already a pretty arduous process. Our government's putting unnecessary handicaps on the development of power plants, not out of concerns for our safety, but because the Nuclear Reactor Commission wants job security. Now, nuclear energy, especially in California, has long been considered dangerous and impractical. A major reason why nuclear energy is feared is because of its potential to weaponize radioactive waste. And there's this moral dilemma with the proliferation of nuclear energy because of its association with weapons. And a primary concern of utilizing nuclear energy is the potential for radioactive fuel or waste to fall into the wrong hands and be used in a terrorist attack. Being against nuclear power because of nuclear weapons is like not drinking water because people drown in it. Nuclear fuel rods cannot be weaponized without undergoing isotope enrichment, and only about 10 countries in the world have ever successfully accomplished this. So to suggest a terrorist attack or a terrorist organization has the means to produce a nuclear bomb domestically is pretty ridiculous. In fact, nuclear energy is the world's leading means of denuclearization. 10% of all energy in the United States comes from Soviet or blended down Soviet nuclear warheads. Now, much of the controversy surrounding nuclear energy can be traced back to nuclear weapons and the belief that it enables their production, when in fact the opposite's true. It gives countries an incentive to tear down their nuclear stockpiles. Now, nuclear energy is considered to be more dangerous than the alternatives, especially with California being on a fault line and facilities needing to be near a body of water. Now, nuclear facilities do require a steady supply of water to cool the reactors so they don't overheat, but this concern the reactors that will pollute and irradiate entire bodies of water. Examples like Fukushima and 3 Mile Island are highly publicized examples as to why nuclear energy is too risky to implement. And while it's true that nuclear energy does require large bodies of water to operate, the effect that it has on the environment is highly exaggerated. You can go for a nice swim just outside of a nuclear reactor and be totally fine. According to James Hansen, a NASA scientist and nuclear physicist, using historical production data, we calculate that global nuclear power has prevented, on average, 1.84 million air pollution-related deaths and 64 gigatons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas emissions that would have resulted from fossil fuel burning. It would take too long to address each nuclear disaster individually, as they all have suffered from various technical and operator errors. But one thing is worth note, is that nuclear energy has saved more lives than it's ever taken, and it's done way more for the environment than it's harmed. Increasing nuclear energy tenfold in California is not only a cost-effective solution to meeting the energy demands of the future, but it's also the safest and most practical means of doing so. California has chosen to focus on unreliable renewable energy while maintaining its natural gas facilities, and this has resulted in a dangerous reliance on out-of-state energy. Much of the fear surrounding nuclear energy is pretty irrational. As James Lovelock states in his independent article, "Nuclear power is the only green solution," opposition to nuclear energy is based on irrational fear fed by Hollywood-style fiction, the green lobbies, and media. These fears are unjustified, and nuclear energy from its start in the 1950s has proved to be the safest of all energy sources. We must stop fretting over the minute statistical risks of cancer from chemicals or from radiation. Just think about how nuclear energy is portrayed in The Simpsons. This is textbook brainwashing, and it's done to make you fear something that you don't understand. If government restrictions and limitations on nuclear energy are lifted, not only can California be 100% carbon emission free, but we can also reduce our reliance on out-of-state energy. You can think of nuclear energy like Shaquille O'Neal on a playground basketball court. No one who's already played the great game as an energy supplier can win if they let atomic energy play without some serious restrictions. As radioactive waste becomes recycled in larger quantities and the possibility of waste being weaponized becomes mitigated, it's pretty insane that California refuses to take advantage of this scientific marvel. And even if California chooses to continue with burning more natural gas and clearing wild land for solar and wind farms, we'll still need to increase nuclear energy. The rapid growth of consumption to over 30 trillion kilowatt hours per year by 2040 globally means that 20 trillion kilowatt per hour years of non-fossil fuel generated power needs to come from other sources. And if half of that comes from alternative, non-nuclear, non-hydroelectric sources, which is a 3,000% increase, then nuclear still needs to increase by a factor of 4 worldwide to compensate. The speed at which nuclear technology is advancing is outpacing anything that solar, wind, or hydroelectric is doing right now by a long shot. We can solve both energy deficiencies and global warming by focusing our energy production efforts on nuclear power. In conclusion, nuclear energy is the alternative energy choice that can adequately meet the current and future demands of energy production. Hopefully I've cleared up a lot of the misconceptions surrounding the dangers of nuclear energy and have stated my reasons for believing that it's better for the environment than the alternatives. Think about all the reasons I've discussed why nuclear energy has been shed in a bad light, and the countless political motives as to why nuclear energy is less consumed, and how this is primarily due to the fact that other forms of energy production simply don't compete with nuclear energy's effectiveness. And we all benefit from having strong energy grids. It provides us with the lifeblood of the latest of gadgetry and improves our ability to expand our technological horizons. And now everyone has a say where our energy comes from, but in order to have a say in it, people need the facts, and they need to be well informed. And it's a simple fact that nuclear energy is the way to go. And now, I'm not trying to be pro-nuclear here. I'm simply trying to be pro-environment. Thank you.